AM 590, KXSP Omaha's ESPN Radio. It's time for the Metro's only racing talk show. The Front Stretch, presented by Joe's Karting in Council Bluffs. Now, here's Dan Taylor and Buddy Ray.
Well, good morning, race fans, and welcome back to the Front Stretch, presented by Joe's Karting in Council Bluffs, online at joeskarting.com. We are continuing the Playland Speedway Reunion show. Want to say thank you to all of our fine sponsors, Kaziski Auto Parts for bringing us the Legends of the Dirt series, Max I. Walker for supporting the Playland Speedway show as the presenters of the show, Joe's Karting. Thank you so much to Joe's Karting, online at joeskarting.com. Also want to say thank you so much to Stan Caesar and Wayne Q for helping to organize the big event today. And staying with that, I'll turn it over to you. We've got a fresh panel. Again, we just move along with all the different drivers that came out to Quaker Steak Lube in September and did the Playland Speedway show.
Well, we got a couple different eras up here. Of course, Jerry Slusky is his family operated and owned Playland Speedway for quite a number of years, and he's back with us again on this segment, and we're going to talk a little bit about the history back in the early days of Wayne touched on this a little bit earlier on. I know you were tied up and weren't able to be here, but how actually things got started over there, the transition from the dog track into racing cars, and of course your dad was over there for a number of years, and then you were kind of the second generation, came in and kind of gave it the rebirth back in the late 60s. And talk just a little bit about the early years. Then we're going to move back up into the 60s and the 70s and talk with Kevin Wolf and Howard Koziel, a couple racers over there. And, of course, the Wolf family, longtime stalwarts over at the Playland Speedway. George was in the house. He was a good friend of many racers. And I tell you what, the family auto parts store probably supplied a lot of parts to people and all the racers when they were maybe a little bit down on their luck. Old George would always take care of them, and they never went without having their parts when they needed them. But Jerry, talk just a little bit about the early years.
Sure. Okay, so I'm going to just give you a thumbnail of what I think took place. Now, remember, my dad purchased this land and leased part of it and purchased part of it in 1947. His intention was to build an amusement park, and he started with the roller coaster, of course, and the bumper cars and some other rides. But at the same time, that land was important to him because he inherited the former dog track. And he saw the vision to turn that track into a stock car racing arena that would match up well with the amusement park. So I'm not sure if they started racing in 48, but I'm sure they started in 49. Does anybody know when that started?
I believe 49 was the first
49.
year. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And those were midgets, I believe.
Midgets, yeah. The hot rods and stuff.
And then it gravitated into the coupes, and the stock car racing became extremely popular. The amusement park, the stock car racing, it all worked together to be a very successful operation well into the 50s, into the 60s, and that's when I came along, and I was at UNO my junior year, and we started up the Bronco style of racing, and as I think we discussed last show, it turned into a very successful thing for the next 9 or 10 years.
Mm-hmm. And back in the original days, not only the racing going on, you had the amusement park going on, but something that's just about unheard of, a weekly TV show that televised the races. That would be unheard of in today's time, but it was something that they did live broadcasts of the races every Friday night. Right,
and that was huge. And I have to give credit my dad and Lee Barron, if you all remember that name,
yep.
And a guy named Kelly. Does anybody remember Kelly's first name? Bernie Kelly. Thank you very much, Howard. They pitched the television station, and as we all know, stock car racing doesn't get the first page on any sports page. But back then, it was really difficult to get any coverage at all. But by going to TV and having that on every Friday night was a huge jump in the interest in the area, both from drivers and fans for stock car racing, and that was a huge leap for this business.
Mm-hmm. And of course, I had the pleasure of meeting your dad, Abe Slusky, and he was good friends with my dad for a number of years, and a real promoter, like you talked about, and your involvement. You talked about the World Herald, how to get auto racing on the front pages. You guys were heavily involved with the Goodfellows, had the race every year that Lynn Grable was up here talking about. He had the fortune of winning that race back, I believe, in 1962, and it gave the auto racing sport a lot of exposure that you wouldn't have probably ordinarily not have gotten. So we move up into this Bronco class, and it exploded like wildfire. And I remember, as you said, 10 heat races all the way down to maybe a D or an E feature, and the place was packed. The old covered grandstand. It was an atmosphere. It was a phenomena.
It got to the point where we would have fans lined up at 5:30 and 6 o'clock to get in for the 7:30 or 8 o'clock start time. We knew we were going to have a big house that night. We'd be popping the popcorn and stocking the beer and cooking the hot dogs, and it was just always fun. It was a fun atmosphere, and like you mentioned, once we got to 100 cars, and then I think many of you might remember that we then added mini stocks. George is here with the mini stocks, and when we'd have a demolition derby at the end. Well, anyway, it was kind of like a three-ring circus, and for us to pull off what amounted to about 15 races a night, we had to organize the pits in a way and get everybody lined up to come out for one as soon as the previous race was over. And that was a logistical nightmare, but it did work, and believe it or not, we got some of the drivers to actually listen and follow directions.
You started the mini stock class over there. You mentioned George Roselands, who's here today. He was involved. Ed Morris actually drove a mini stock. Howard Koziel, sitting down at the end of the panel, had something to do with the mini stock for a few years. And Kevin Wolf is with us up here. You raced, I believe, and your brothers raced over there. Your dad was a fixture over there, George. And another thing that you guys had over there that I can't remember any other racetrack in this area was figure eight racing. Right. You guys had the only figure eight track over there, and it was the perfect deal, and just another thing that the fans would flock to the place every Saturday night to see.
You want to comment?
Yep.
Figure eight was really a sensational, interesting event. I will tell you just one quick story, and there were like 10 of these, but when you'd have one of those crashes where they'd start working their way around and spread out, and then you'd see one car coming through the crosshairs of the figure eight and another one coming, and each one would accelerate, and you just truthfully, it was truly an accident going to happen. And then you'd go over to the cars because they were upside down and one of them was on fire and this and that, and you'd reach in there and all they had was a seat belt. They did not have the full shoulder harness, and they'd have a seat belt. They of course didn't have roll bars, and we were a little concerned from an insurance standpoint, but 99% of the time, thank goodness, you'd go over to the car, the driver's upside down, his car is smoking, there might be fire, there's rescue squad on the way, and you look in the car and you say, "Fred, are you okay?" He says, "Yeah, just get me out of this god thing." And he couldn't get out of his seatbelt, and anyway, it worked out well.
When you say a seatbelt, do you mean just like a simple lap belt, or did it cross over the chest too?
It was truly a lap belt. These were minimalist stock cars, okay?
Now we've got these big 5-point harnesses, and we've got Hans restraining devices, and yeah, it's amazing more people didn't get hurt back then.
And everybody else, all the other drivers had the 5-point. These guys, this was really at the lower end of the stock car racing world.
But I tell you what, it just added a little bit more to the excitement, especially when the cars started getting closer to one another when they crossed the X over there. And Kevin Wolf sitting up here with us. I know I think George used to race in the old figure eight races back in the days with Ronnie Frederick and the Marco boys, and it was quite a deal up there. Kevin, talk just a little bit about your early memories. You were probably one of the younger brothers, but grew up with memories of Playland Speedway.
I can remember one time. My dad getting stuck in a figure eight car that he got upside down, They had to pull him out the back window because he couldn't fit out the side anymore.
Well, George, you know,
he was a large fella.
He was a large fella. Let's just say, yeah.
Yeah, Kevin, if it's more comfortable for you, you could take that microphone off the stand and just kind of hold it real close to your face.
Mm-hmm.
If that's more comfortable for you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Whatever works best for you guys, feel free.
There you go.
That way you can kind of sit back in the seat a little bit. Just get it right up against your chin there.
Okay.
That's perfect.
Yeah, talk just a little bit about your family's involvement. You know, your brothers raced over there. Kenny raced over there. I think Ron raced over there. Matter of fact, I bought my first race car from your brother Ron. That was quite a number of years ago.
Right.
All the guys that they used to help out on parts, you know, of course, Wolf Auto Parts over on South 36th and South Omaha down in Bellevue.
One story comes to mind when I met Barney Barrett. You know Barney Barrett? Mm-hmm. He introduced himself, and of course I didn't know who he was. But he said, "Your dad had the tow trucks that would outrun the cars pushing them. Uh-huh. They'd be flapping their arms because the tow truck was faster than the cars during the race."
Uh-huh.
But I don't know, just a lot of good memories.
I know, yeah, exactly. That's kind of what this whole thing's about. Howard, you wanted to share a George Wolf story, I think.
I do. I used to, first of all, I raced at Playland primarily in 1975, 76, and 77. Have vivid memories of the last season and the very last night, kind of sad memories of that very last night. But I have a George Wolf story. I mean, I've got more than one, but this one is my favorite. Kept my car at the Standard gas station on 36th and Harrison, which was about 3 or so miles north of where Wolf's auto parts yard was. And
you can call it a junkyard.
Kevin says I can call it a junkyard, but we'll just call it a salvage yard, okay? Anyway, George was a fixture at Playland. Usually in his, as I remember, at least towards the end there, he had a red Dodge tow truck. And we would always see George because logistically, where I kept my car and where he was coming from to go to the races, you know, we would see him go past and always wave to him.
See, we thought you were going to say that it was always because your car needed to be towed.
We'll get to that.
Okay.
Well, here comes one of the more exotic things we did. You know, the gentlemen that were up here earlier were talking about affordable racing and being able to race on a budget, and that truly was the case at Playland. Well, our towing device was a 10-foot log chain. And yours truly sat in the race car and operated the brakes and you know, steered it and everything, and that's how we towed over to Playland. Well, we used to like to get there early because that last year, if you got there early, you could hot lap into oblivion, and because it was the last year, I loved racing there. I loved driving that track. It was so fun to drive. Well, we were running late for whatever reason, and so was George. And usually George was one of the first ones there. So he saw that we were still in the lot at the station, and he pulls in. We were just getting ready to leave. We had the chain hooked up. We were getting ready to go, and George says, "Disconnect that stupid chain." And of course, again, we were on a budget, and I knew he was going to offer us a tow, and I said, "Well, George, we don't, you know, we're on a really tight budget, and unless we do well tonight, I don't have cash right now to pay you. Don't worry about it. Get that stupid chain disconnected. Let's get going." So my pit help took one of the vehicles with all our stuff in it, or well, in those days, you packed your stuff into the race car because the cockpits or the interior weren't covered. They were a passenger car with a bucket seat or a racing seat in it. So we get hooked up and take off, and things were pretty calm till we hit the interstate, and I started looking over at the speedometer on George's Dodge pickup, and it's getting into the upper register, and I'm starting to get a little bit nervous, wondering either we're going to get there really fast or we're not going to get there. That was the fastest tow to Playland, my fastest ride ever to Playland. Probably wore the front tires out on the car because he picked it up from the back end, but he got us over there so quickly. And then at the end of the night, he found us after we got paid, and he said, "Come on, let's go." Well, George, it's after the races. We can just tow home with our chain. Forget that stupid chain. Let's go. So he hooked us up. When we got back to the station, I offered to pay him. He wouldn't take the money. It's just a fond memory. We appreciated George. He was a friend of racing. He's the one that kind of implemented the Tiny Lund Memorial thing that actually started at Playland. Shelby County Speedway in Harlan, Iowa, of course, it's been a major event there for years. Unfortunately, it was canceled this year, but George, a friend of racing and a friend of Tiny Lund, was the one that started. But that's my fondest memory of George, and thank you for asking.
Yeah.
Of course, George and Tiny went way back. They were good friends for a number of years, and Tiny Lund actually was married at Playland Speedway, back in the days, right. And it is quite a deal. Well, we're going to race off into the next turn. Kevin, thanks for coming up. Good to have you here.
Thanks for
Howard, we're going to keep you up here. Jerry, we'll keep you up here, and bring Wayne back up here. Talk about the transition then from the Klein and Slusky era. The track was sold then a couple times until it's the final laps were run back in '77. So thanks for coming. We're going to move off into the next turn. Take a break right now. We'll be right back with you.
This is the Front Stretch presented by Joe's Karting, online at joeskarting.com. We're on AM 590 Omaha's ESPN Radio.
Yeah. This is Andrew from Kaziski Auto Parts. Kaziski Auto Parts is an insurance quality used parts supplier that can match your foreign or domestic car or truck needs. If you have a damaged or broke down car or truck, we guarantee a clean and quality part in next day fashion. Kaziski Auto Parts, your neighborhood premium recycled parts supplier. Call any Kaziski Auto Parts salesman today by dialing 402-731-4592 or visit us at 5040 I Street in Omaha. Kaziski Auto Parts, our quality used parts will match your car or truck's needs.
Are you ready for fast-paced, adrenaline-pumping, wheel-to-wheel racing right here in the Metro? Get to Joe's Karting in Council Bluffs and see what it's like to race real go-karts. Joe's Karting knows it's no fun to race go-karts at 10 miles per hour, so they ripped the governors out, and now the only restriction is how good you are at racing. It's full-throttle, white-knuckle racing every day of the week. Head over to joeskarting.com for hours, prices, and specials, or give Buddy a call today and set up your group races at 712-256-5278.
We're working the High Line into Turn 2 on the Front Stretch, presented by Joe's Karting, online at joeskarting.com.
We continue to roll on with the Playland Speedway Tribute Show here on the Front Stretch on AM 590 Omaha's ESPN Radio. Thank you so much to Max I. Walker for bringing us the Playland Speedway Tribute Show. And we continue to move on to turn number 2. Stan, take it away. What do you got now for us?
Well, we rolled into the next corner, and we're already into the Bronco division, and it has taken off, going great guns. We touched a little bit earlier when the guys were up here about the changes then were starting to take place. We had 100 Bronco cars over there on a nightly basis. Everybody wanting to take the next step, modify the cars a little bit. Jerry, talk a little bit about you guys came into that super class where you open up the engine package rules a little bit and the tire rules and everything. Talk about taking the changes and taking the class into the next level.
Yeah. This was an important leap. We
straight back.
The blue shirt there, got it. We had such an overwhelming success in the Bronco division, and there was some pressure coming up from the drivers to have a class that was just a touch up from that. And so we moved into modifieds, or what did we call it? Supers, okay. Yeah. And I know Eddie Morris was part of that and a number of others, and it was just an incredible group of cars. And I would like to share one story. Do we have time?
Sure, you bet.
We got plenty of time. Go right ahead.
Okay. I think it was 69 or 70. It always bothered me that our track, if you remember the first asphalt job, would give you about maybe a lane and a half in the corner, and then it would flatten out. And when it flattened out, or if you got your right side tires up in that flattened out area, you could slide right out. And I knew that we could have a more competitive racing if I could get more of a bowl shaped out of that little track. And many of you might recall that I believe it was 69 that we did repave 70. Yep. Thank you, Howard. Love this, people. This is great. But we spent, it wasn't just the asphalt. We spent a lot of money engineering the track so that we could maximize that bowl-shaped feeling. And the way we did that, and I remember working with the asphalt engineers who helped us design this thing, was we actually cut down the asphalt right at the top there, and then we built it up with, instead of 4 inches of asphalt, we went to 6 and 8 inches of asphalt, and we had to make sure that with that amount of asphalt, it would hold with the pressure of the cars coming around and those big tires, particularly on the modified division. And this engineering firm, who have become friends of our family over the years, designed this, and they did a perfect job, and they were out there for every lay of that asphalt to make sure that it worked. And when that thing was over, I think most of the drivers remember what a different experience it was at Playland and how much more fun and competitive racing we had.
Yeah, I think Ron Tilley was on in a previous segment, talked about the lap times. Then after that repaving, the lap times came down almost a second a lap with the big tires, and how much it improved the adhesion and made racing a lot more fun and a lot more predictable track conditions.
Stan, if I could ask a quick question. Nowadays, I've talked to a lot of track presidents when they go through repaves for NASCAR, and they talk about different compounds in different parts of the area. Did you guys get into compounds for the asphalt?
Yeah.
Different mixtures because of the different weather conditions?
Yes, we did. And that was the other thing, great point, that the engineers pointed out to us, is that with winter and the seasonal change, and then the driver's tires, etc., there were compounds, even back then, that they suggested we use, and they specified those compounds to the asphalt company, and then they actually tested those compounds before they were laid down.
How could they test that? I mean, it's on such a big scale. How are they able to test that?
Yeah, it was made up of the size of the stones in it and the type of oil mixture that went in it, and they were very good at it. They were very sophisticated, and it made a huge difference. And I will throw this in. My dad said to me when I told him I would like to repave the track, and I said, here's the number. If we were to just put down 3 or 4 inches of asphalt, it would be like, I know this is a big number back then, but it was like 15 or 20,000. Mm-hmm. Then I said, Dad, we really want to do it right, though. And I talked to these engineers, and they said, here's what we need to do. It's going to be 6 inches here, and 2 here, and 3 here. And that's going to cost $40,000. I honestly thought my dad was going to lose it, but he went along with it, and it did make a huge difference. It made it a much more competitive track.
That's really interesting, and that's another part that I find fascinating with this being an asphalt track, is that the other, if you don't mind, Stan, if I'll interrupt to kind of steal a little bit of the questioning here, but I found it very fascinating with the asphalt aspect of it all. That how often did you guys have to repave that track? Because this is one thing that NASCAR tracks are dealing with now. About every 10 years, the tracks are getting so worn down, but that's when they only race on them probably 10, 15 times a year through all the different series. So how often did you guys have to repave that track?
Yeah, it's a great question. We did not redo it to the end till 77, and it honestly, it was such a good job by the engineers, and I want to compliment them that they did it right, and it held up through 15 or 20 races a year for the next 7-8 years, and we never had a problem again. And yet I do watch NASCAR races carefully, and I see all those ruts and everything. Yeah. And of course they have a much bigger track, much more expensive proposition, but I was very proud of the fact that we had a smooth surface all the way around, and it would hold, and you could actually get a great corner out of it.
So it wasn't some of these tracks that they talk about with characteristics. You know, Iowa Speedway just down the road talks about those characteristics with the bumps in the track, and you have to really know where to put your line. You guys didn't have to deal with that because it's a very smooth lay?
We did not. Now, before we redid it, we had some. We had to go out and patch, etc. But once we did this, a few patches, but generally speaking, it was a very nice surface.
Interesting. Stan?
Well, I can remember back in my limited number of laps around Playland Speedway, back in the early days, guys used to hook the left front wheel down on the inside of the track, sometimes if you're running the low side. But what you really had to do to be able to win at Playland was to be able to pass out in that second lane out there. And that was the whole key to the whole thing. And it was just once guys kind of figured out set a little bit different camber setting because of the way, as you talked about, the bowl shape of the track. By the time I was on there, it had been repaved, and that was the fast way to get around Playland Speedway. And like I say, you guys did a great job, and it was the only asphalt track in the area. I mean, we had one time IMCA, the new model cars came in. They put on a 100-lap race. You had Ernie Durr and Ramo Stott, and all the big dogs were in for that deal. And but there was a NASCAR race at Playland Speedway back in the 50s, and it was quite a deal,
Well, I just want to touch on. I remember what happened too is McCreary tires at the time was one of the bigger tires that was running on the late models and that. And I know from studying that they done a lot of trying to match it up with the different.
Hey Wayne, talk into the microphone.
They even done some testing in their own labs and that. And this is just my thoughts on it about even running that high side there. You didn't notice all the marble. You would think that even rubber, the rubber would accumulate on that high side. And I seen many nights. Carl Gray and Cave Jr. Carl Gray used to own that high side in their particular class. And Carl and I just talked the other night, and there was he just didn't notice there was that much, like slinging or any rubber or too much marbles up there.
There wasn't.
Like Jerry's saying, it was good. It could be a 3-lane track, but you had a good passing lane on that track.
Well, Jerry, so we're in the early to mid 70s, and I know the interest started to change a little bit. I know you started getting into law practice and everything. Talk about when you were ready to make the transition and leave the raceway, and then where we kind of went from there.
Well,
go ahead.
Well, Jerry.
Jerry.
Okay,
Yeah.
Go ahead, Jerry.
Well, that's true. I went to, let's see, I got out of college in 67, and I went to law school, and I ran the track through law school. I remember having a Memorial Day weekend that looked like this. I would study all week. I would then in the afternoons go over to the track and get the track all ready for the racing, 2 races that Saturday and Monday. And on Friday, I would take a final exam. I would then run to the park and get the track even more ready for the Saturday night races. Then Sunday, I would study all day for my Tuesday exam and go back to the track Monday and Monday night and have that. And I ended up graduating from law school, as you know. Mm-hmm. And after a couple years of being in practice in Omaha, I went back to school in New York for a year, and that's the year that I transferred it over. And I don't remember, was that, who was that?
Was it Tom Paul Taney
Yes.
that was in the middle?
That
Was
Tom.
the middle?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then after that, honestly, I lost some track as to what happened. Who
Tom,
were,
then you look right out there, you see Bob Golden along with Gerald Leesenby. They purchased the track,
Okay.
and they took it to that final checkered flag. And Wayne, you want to talk a little bit about that?
I was just going to add, we had the Brotherson and Klein era too in there. What I really liked about the Slusky family is they introduced some classes for the economy racer, the pony class, the road runner class, which a guy just coming into racing, he could get in there for a low dollar amount, and they paid a fair purse for the race and that. And then you could run that a while, and then you can move up into the Bronco, and the classes kind of changed around. I can't tell you exact years. I know I started in on I think the road runners were Howard could probably tell me, in the front end of the maybe 70, 71.
73 and 74.
73 and 74, and then they run 2-3 years and
Couple.
that. But
Man, I got to tell you, Howard, you got dates down like nobody's business.
Well, there's a reason for that, guys, and that is Playland Speedway meant so much to not just me, but a lot of us. And I won't get into it right now, but I told you that the very last night, October 15th, 1977, I remember it vividly. It was exceptionally chilly that evening. It's just a very sad memory, but that place meant so much to me, and I'm not the only one. I know there's folks here. I know there's folks that'll probably be listening to the show. And again, thank you guys for doing this. Thanks to Ed Morris and Quaker Steak here for making it available. It's been awesome listening to Bill Rick and Rich Munson, and of course Don Brown, Bob Johnson, Ron Tilley, Sonny Miller, those guys that were in the Bronco/Super area. Era. I'm sorry. That was just that. It was great stuff, and so yeah, I know some of that stuff because I don't want to lose the memory.
Yeah.
And I did participate, even though I said I raced 75, 6, and 7. Actually, the first event I ever did over there was a demolition derby in 1970. I was fortunate to be one of Joe Estes' helpers on his mini stocker, and I bought a demo car from his brother Leroy. And listening to Jerry talk about the asphalt resurfacing, I was a junior in high school that year, and I remember towards the end of the school year, that's when they were laying the asphalt. Well, I sort of skipped lunch hour at school over in Omaha and went over
Say it isn't so.
to Playland, and I watched that operation, dreaming of the day when I would get to race there. And it was pretty sophisticated what they were doing. It wasn't just patching the parking lot. I didn't realize it was that sophisticated listening to Jerry describe it. But that 1970 season, in my opinion, overall, of what I was able to witness, that was one of the best ever. Yeah. It was the first year of what you guys labeled super stocks. Of course, Paul Zidane, Ron Tilley, Ron touched on it. Stan, you touched on it with Ron a little bit earlier. Those guys actually ended up tying for the points championship that year, and the stands were full. That wasn't exaggeration. Those stands were full every week. And, we were just over there helping on the little mini stocker, but we got to be part of all that, and it was just great. And to this day, it hurts to drive by the former site. It hurts. So I'm sorry I'm such a geek as far as remembering dates, but it's because it meant a lot to me.
Don't apologize at all.
Well, I'll tell you what, we're gonna take another short break, get into that final corner, come back after the break, and wrap things up with the same guys we got up here on the panel. We'll be right back with you.
Yep, we'll be back in turn number 3 here on AM 590, Omaha's ESPN Radio.
Max I Walker has been providing great service to the Omaha area for nearly 100 years. With 23 convenient locations, it's easy to find a Max I Walker near you. From dry cleaning to laundry to uniform rentals, Max I Walker is here to make sure you look your best. Max I Walker has been a proud supporter of local dirt track racing since 1974. From Sunset Speedway to Adams County Speedway and legends of the dirt like Dave Chase, Glenn Roby, Ron Tilley, and so many more. Give Max I Walker a call today or head to maxiwalker.com.
Are you ready for fast-paced, adrenaline-pumping, wheel-to-wheel racing right here in the Metro? Get to Joe's Karting in Council Bluffs and see what it's like to race real go-karts. Joe's Karting knows it's no fun to race go-karts at 10 miles per hour, so they ripped the governors out, and now the only restriction is how good you are at racing. It's full-throttle, white-knuckle racing every day of the week. Head over to joeskarting.com for hours, prices, and specials, or give Buddy a call today and set up your group races at 712-256-5278.
Time to grab another tear-off and make your move. We're headed into turn 3 on the front stretch, presented by Joe's Karting.
Welcome back to the front stretch, heading into turn number 3. We've gone a little long in the first 2, so we're going to cut her a little bit shorter now. We got about 10 minutes left in the next 2 turns, so actually about 20 minutes left total. But we are at Quaker Steak Lube at Council Bluffs for the Playland Speedway Reunion show. Stan Caesar helping me to MC this whole thing, and Wayne Q. Thank you so much to Wayne for helping to organize the whole event. Stan, you and Howard have got more stories you guys want to tell of Playland Speedway, so I'll let you guys take it away.
Well, I'm gonna pass things over to Howard because he's kind of the official historian of the later years at Playland Speedway. Howard.
Well, thank you. I'll try to condense this because I don't think too many people will be here when the sun comes up tomorrow morning. I want to start off with, I think when I was mentioning names of the drivers that were up here earlier, I think I might have left Sonny Miller out. If I left somebody out, I apologize. It was great to hear from all those guys, and I was a teenager that was had not reached driver's license age yet when the Broncos were running, and while I didn't get to go every week, I looked up to a lot of those guys. If someone that wanted to race, you'd watch those guys, and I looked up to a lot of them. But I just want to touch real quickly on the last 3 years. After Jerry got away from the track, Bob Golden and Gerald Leesenby, I don't know what the arrangement was. I don't remember if it was a lease or a purchase. I'm sorry, I don't remember that part. But Bob being a former racer and Gerald also being formerly involved in racing, it was great to have those guys running the place because they, number one, if anyone here remembers, the city of Council Bluffs and the political entities therein wanted Playland gone. And Bob and Gerald and their families, in essence, gave the Speedway a 3-year additional lease on life, and we're forever grateful because that gave us the opportunity to go over there and run. And another thing I want to mention that those folks did, there was a section of bleachers, I believe it was either in the 1976 or in the final season, 1977, and we just talked about the political powers to be wanted Playland gone. So one of the inspectors deemed one of the sections of center bleachers unsafe. This is unsafe. You guys aren't going to be able to open up. Done deal. So using good Midwest and American ingenuity, Bob and Gerald not only addressed the problem, they got rid of it. They tore that section of stands out. So if you look on some websites or you see some aerial shots of the last year, you'll notice there's a section of bleachers missing. It's missing because the city wanted to shut it down right then and there, but Bob and Gerald just got rid of the problem. So they did things like this to keep the place going. They were also very fair. Obviously, with the section of bleachers missing, the crowds weren't what they were in the 1970 heyday, but they were still pretty good on given nights, but they paid us a percentage of the gate. And when the crowd was small, the purse was a little bit smaller, but they always paid us. They always paid us in cash. It was never, you get your money next week. They were very fair in the way they ran things, and they did the best they could, and those of us that ran there really appreciated that.
Howard, what was the city side of the argument for shutting the track down? Was it progression of the economy and of the city expanding out? I mean, we talked about Sunset Speedway, kind of the expansion of Omaha is what did it in. Was it the same thing for Playland?
Well, I believe Wayne can probably better address that. Several of us drivers, which kind of reminded me of the band Motley Crue, went to a Council Bluffs mayoral/city council meeting to try to present our case about keeping the place open. I don't know what all the details were other than its physical appearance was tattered after the years in the Midwest weather. I don't know what all the situation was there, but Wayne here may be able to address that for us.
Well, basically what it was, the main concern, they condemned it for the bleacher section, but the wiring. Gerald and Bob, I don't know, they just had to put a lot of money to get it wired back in. But talking with different city fathers and that, this was a plan that was, ahead of its time in that. They knew that in 1977, the lease and all that would be, 77, they knew that was going to be the last year for some unknown reason. I don't know if... was there still a lease with the city on that?
Was over that year.
Okay. But anyway, they got the track back on and they got it going. It took a lot of, inspectors, but like Howard said, Harold just bent over backwards to make it a venue for the racing and, pay us the best he could. And granted, the crowds weren't what there was, but, we're stepping into a new era and that, and, the entertainment dollar was starting to get stretched just a little bit in that. But one thing I got to just make note of, and this will probably be my final note on Playland, but I've been friends with Howard, so many Donnie Brown, everybody out here for years and that. But what I liked about Playland was the camaraderie. You know, I break down one night. I go to Elvin Hyman's house the next day. We had a special race. He's not racing. I take his drive shaft out of his car, and I come back down and I go racing. My car was running one night. I had to do something else. Another driver that was a top 10 driver uses my car so that he, didn't lose points. That's just the way it was, and that's what I really like about it. And this is the reason I'm doing what I do for Playland. Like Howard, this is just our payback and that. And, number one, we got to thank the Slusky family. And we appreciate what you guys have done for that. So,
and I'd like to add something to that that's I was thinking about while this show was going on. That my last involvement was 73 or 4, and now we're, I can't believe it, 40 years later?
Yeah.
40 years later. But I have had the pleasure of running into literally hundreds of people who knew of our involvement at Playland, and I knew they were either fans or drivers or pit crew, and everyone to the person said the same thing that you just said, and that is that the family feeling, the good feelings, the friendships developed over there were so special, and they so appreciated those days back in our 20s and 30s when we were doing that, and they've had a good feeling about Playland and about the experience over the years. And the last thing I'll say is this. I was pretty young when I was doing this, but I learned the quality of really, really good, hardworking Americans, Omahans, Council Bluffs people, and what it meant to make a living and try to have some fun in their lives and be with their families and their friends and building and running these cars. And it was a very special experience, and an experience that I have used in the practice of law with all sorts of people, and I always reach back to those days at Playland, whether they were big nights or small nights or fight nights or whatever, and understood the importance of just being good people, and I learned that from these people.
Jerry, we've asked every driver that's come up here tonight, and I think it's something that we definitely need to ask you. Can you isolate one memory that is your favorite memory of Playland Speedway? Is there just one you can isolate?
Well,
the last day?
Here's the night that Paul Zidan's car was claimed, and he refused to sell it, and we had a big meeting over at the Standard Oil Station, and I don't know who owned it, but it was over on Avenue G.
Eddie Morris.
Did you own that,
Was that Eddie? Did you own it at that time?
And
so Ed owned it at that time.
I remember the car was there, and we were like standing on the car, and there must have been 300 or 400 drivers and pit crew, etc., and it was all over the newspaper, and that was another night that I made sure Ron Stander was available. That's my number one memory.
So did he never ended up selling the car after it was claimed?
Ed, did he? No, he never let it go.
Never let it go.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to say he had gotten, I think, 3 cars claimed previous to that, and did let them all go. And finally, the last car, that they decided to go race elsewhere.
All right, we're going to take a real quick break. We'll wrap it all up in turn number 4. Thank you to everybody for coming out to the Playland Speedway Reunion Show, presented by the Front Stretch Radio Show, and brought to you by Joe's Karting in Council Bluffs, online at joeskarting.com.
We have all been there before. Broken car part in your hand and some snot-nosed punk behind the counter has no idea what he is talking about, but he guarantees that this part will fix your car. You pay an arm and a leg for the replacement, get it home, and sure enough, it doesn't fit your car. Now, learn from your mistake and give an experienced salesperson at Kosiski Auto Parts a call today at 402-731-4592. Kosiski Auto Parts will get you back on the road with your arms and legs still attached.
Are you ready for fast-paced, adrenaline-pumping, wheel-to-wheel racing right here in the Metro? Get to Joe's Karting in Council Bluffs and see what it's like to race real go-karts. Joe's Karting knows it's no fun to race go-karts at 10 miles per hour, so they ripped the governors out, and now the only restriction is how good you are at racing. It's full-throttle, white-knuckle racing every day of the week. Head over to joeskarting.com for hours, prices, and specials, or give Buddy a call today and set up your group races at 712-256-5278.
Get ready for the victory lap as we make our way into Turn 4 on the front stretch. Presented by Joe's Karting. Online at joeskarting.com.
Just about ready to wrap this baby up. Heading into turn number 4 on the front stretch, and we're going to wrap up the Playland Speedway Reunion show. I want to say thank you to everybody who has helped out. Quaker Steak and Lube for giving us the location. Max I. Walker, Joe's Karting, Kaziski Auto Parts for helping to fund the front stretch and to keep the show on the air. Thank you so much to all of you for coming out today. And Stan and Wayne, you guys helped plan this show, and I appreciate you guys' time on Thursday nights joining us. And Howard, you've done a big job today helping us with show content. And everybody out here, thank you so much for coming. All right, Stan, we've got about 10 minutes left in the show. Let's wrap her up.
Well,
I'm going to turn your microphone back on now.
That would be good. We talked about just about everything. We took it from the 1940s, the dirt track, all the way to the final checkered flag in 1977, and just sitting here talking about what Playland Speedway was. Can anyone imagine if, with the development in downtown Omaha and in Council Bluffs, and with the pedestrian bridge, we've got the sports complex, the new arena. If Playland Speedway was still there today, people could walk to Playland Speedway across the pedestrian bridge. What a phenomenon it would be. There's plenty of dirt tracks in the area, but that little fifth mile to quarter mile asphalt track, there was only one, and it was never imitated, never duplicated. If it was still around today with affordable classes and just where it would be, wouldn't that be something?
It would be awesome.
Is that something that a track like that somebody with a little gusto and ambition and maybe a couple of dollars in their pocket could rebuild, could bring back? I mean, could they go after that engineering company you talked about, Jerry, and redesign, or at least get close to what it was and maybe try to come close to what Playland was? Is that something that maybe some of these guys out here, a couple of you guys have some dollars to put down an asphalt track, right?
Probably the biggest problem would be getting it past the city fathers and the zoning and what it would take.
Big thing, number one is Pottawatomie County, because Bobby Golden's out here, and I'll be real quick about this, but after Playland closed its doors and that, Leesenby owned his property up a Crescent. He had it all excavated. They had a 3/8 mile track. They was going to have a drag strip. Coyote Speedway was going to be the name of it. It was agricultural. They wanted to go down to the Pottawatomie County zoning board, and they would not change it, the zoning. After Gerald spent, Bobby can correct me on this, but I think Gerald spent like $50,000 just getting the power run up there, didn't he? And
it's been a good chunk of change getting
we
things
actually
ready.
seen the track. That track was graded. It was just about ready to go. But my answer is government bodies. I just don't see another track starting that close to the area. Craig Kelly went through. This is a completely different story with Mills County on an option deal.
Yeah.
So
well, I kind of wonder if maybe
it's something we'd like to see. Yes, I would just love to see it, but for it to come to fruition, I think there's too much buildup around.
I think the biggest thing would be the fact, and it might have to be like you guys did. Basically, you guys started over back in 1968, but to have an asphalt track, something totally different.
Yep. And
the shorter the asphalt track, I think it bridges the gap between the high dollar teams and the lower dollar teams. It makes for very competitive racing, and like I said, just wondering what might have been if it was still around today.
Stan, you nailed it. I think, in short, if that's possible for me to say something in short, but I think the draw of Playland Speedway was its size, configuration, asphalt, as Jerry mentioned, and Ed Morris said it well earlier, the drama. But But the true draw for us, and I think for a lot of the folks that raced at Playland, was that configuration, that short asphalt track. Regardless of what your budget was, if you get your car around the corner there, you at least had a chance. I raced dirt and struggled on dirt for a lot of years, and we were able to win a few times. We were able to have some good runs, but I was telling some of the folks out here earlier, none of that. Even winning on dirt in late models, that's a pretty big deal to us, but none of that came close to the fun and the desire of Saturday night to get here fast enough so we could get back to Playland Speedway. It gave that track, that facility, gave everybody who competed at least a chance to be competitive. That's not true on the dirt tracks today.
I have been a track official at Adams County Speedway, and then we reopened Butler County Speedway. And from my experience is the shorter the track, the more competitive they are. That's the reason a lot of tracks, Dan can tell you about Crawford County.
Yeah.
They downsized, because there used to be a huge half mile. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the tracks around the area have downsized just to make the racing more competitive in that. And I think that's what keeps Eagle thriving for 50 years. It's a short track. They got good management, ownership there, and that's what it would take to kind of go along with what Stan's talking about. If a guy was to try it, you'd have to have some deep pockets. You'd have to have some nuggets. And how do you say it on the radio?
But I think the fact
you said it
that it's just a little bit something that's a little bit different, and it'd be the closest thing. You mentioned Eagle Race, but probably the closest thing to a throwback to what we had around here with Sunset and Playland years ago. And it's a 3rd mile track. And everybody has a great time, and we have a lot of fun down at the place. Mm-hmm. And on behalf of everybody here, and I know things are kind of thinning out by the time we finally got to this last corner, but I'd like to thank the Slusky family for bringing Playland Speedway to us back in 1940s, and for those years of enjoyment and entertainment that we all had over there as we grew up.
Thank you guys so much. We're going to wrap the show up today. If I could end on this thought with the same thing I ended on the Sunset Speedway show, is that we talk about these great tracks that if only they could have survived, and we have a lot of great dirt tracks in the area. And Stan, you announced that several of them. Just to get out and support your local dirt track racing and support those that support the racing. Great sponsors that we have on the front stretch, like Kaziski Auto Parts, like Quaker Steak and Lube, Joe's Karting, Max I Walker that helped bring us this show. Support those that support racing, and then we don't have to do these reunion shows on the great racing that was. We can always talk about, Stan, you and I have had this debate of what's the one we're going to do next year. And
promotion is more fun than reunion.
Exactly. We've talked about doing on Eagle Raceway. Well, thankfully, the thing that stops us from doing it on Eagle Raceway is the fact that you could still go out on Saturday night and enjoy some of the best racing around that you can get. And so we don't have to do one on Eagle Raceway or I-80 Speedway on some of the great action they have on a weekly basis and then on a special basis with the Silver Dollar Nationals and the Midwest Fall Brawl. So get out there and support your local racing. Support those that do the racing. Kaziski Auto Parts that help to fund I-80 Speedway and all the sponsors that go out.
Well, big thanks to everybody for coming out, and for everybody that helped out on the panel, all the guys that came up and shared some of their favorite memories. And Dan, we'll throw it back to you. All
right, let's wrap up the show. For Buddy Ray, who who had to take out the last hour of the show, for Jerry Slusky, for Wayne Q, for Howard Kozel. How about that, man? I got those names right finally. How many times did you yell at me, Dan? He's not going to be at the show. So thank you so much for all of you for coming out. Everybody that we had come out. I'm going to forget some names. Please help me, Stan. Lynn Grable, Bill Rick, Rich Munson.
Ron Tilley, Don Brown, Bob Johnson, Sonny Miller. Glenn and Al McKeegan were here earlier. Bob Golden's here.
Ed Morrison.
Ed Morris.
Thanks so much for Ed for coming out and helping us out with this and giving us a venue. Big thank you to Wayne. He's the one that helped me, that took a lot of this stuff off my plate and got the word out and got everything out and about so that everybody knew about it. Howard, you did a great job today. We hope to talk to you more often. I got to have you on the show as a regular guest just to talk about your history. And Stan, as always, I appreciate your help. We'll be back next weekend for the Front Stretch, presented by Joe's Karting on AM 590, Omaha's ESPN Radio.
Max I. Walker has been providing great service to the Omaha area for nearly 100 years. With 23 convenient locations, it's easy to find a Max I. Walker near you. From dry cleaning to laundry to uniform rentals, Max I. Walker is here to make sure you look your best. Max I. Walker has been a proud supporter of local dirt track racing since 1974. From Sunset Speedway to Adams County Speedway and legends of the dirt like Dave Chase, Glenn Roby, Ron Tilley, and so many more. Give Max I. Walker a call today or head to maxiwalker.com.
Are you ready for fast-paced, adrenaline-pumping, wheel-to-wheel racing right here in the Metro? Get to Joe's Karting in Council Bluffs and see what it's like to race real go-karts. Joe's Karting knows it's no fun to race go-karts at 10 miles per hour, so they ripped the governors out, and now the only restriction is how good you are at racing. It's full-throttle, white-knuckle racing every day of the week. Head over to joeskarting.com for hours, prices, and specials, or give Buddy a call today and set up your group races at 712-256-5278.